If you'd like to hear any lore, and I mean any lore whatsoever from the Fallout video game franchise, be it the show, be it the games, be it the one comic book that we have, consider checking out the Ghoulman Entertainment Patreon. From the $1 tier to the $10 tier, your voice is heard every single week when I ask a poll question. And you get to choose what is the next week's lore. And this week's lore, by way of the Ghoulman Entertainment Patreon, I bring you Mick and Ralph from Fallout New Vegas.
We've got stuff we're not even allowed to sell, people. Only at Mick and Ralph's.
Now, Mick and Ralph are a couple. Literally. I was actually going to wait till I said this a little bit later. Mick and Ralph are fellas that love fellas. They're lovers, and they love each other. And before anybody says I'm trying to wake up Fallout, don't forget Fallout was invented by a gay guy. Mick and Ralph are partners. They sleep in the same bed. They also live in their shop that's called Mick and Ralph's. Originally, the sign said Ralph's, and Mick seems to be a bit of an add-on, so it came later. And turns out, I'll talk about it a little bit, Mick did join the ranks a little bit later in opening up a shop, but it's a store in Freeside. By the Freeside East Gate, it's right there as soon as you walk in. It's one of my favorite locations in New Vegas, especially in Freeside, because it feels like a seedy black market. It feels like somewhere I'm not supposed to be. This is the kind of place that I feel like I can get anything I want at any hour for any price. Some of the stuff they sell isn't the best of quality, but the important thing is how they can get things. That's what they're known as. The crier, the kid even says, "We got things we aren't even allowed to sell, people. Only at Mick and Ralph's." And I love that because it implies that it's a black market, but it also implies that it is like an open secret. And I appreciate that for what it is. It became such a vivid memory in my mind of this thing that you could go to so you could procure your goods and you could get a hold of the things that you need. And what I was disappointed by is there's interactions with them. Sure, you can go there to do little bits of quests, but Mick and Ralph are kind of just stagnant. They just kind of sit around, like, there's not anything crazy. It doesn't seem like the world changing affects them. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the point is for them to just set up shop. Maybe the point is for them to just be there and just be like, okay, here I am. I'm going to be a reliable source, because they are, at the end of the day, merchants. They are salespeople that you interact with. But for some reason in my mind, they've been blown up to this astronomical degree of importance. In my mind, they're one of the most important shops in the wasteland. Like, to me, Mick and Ralph is Fallout New Vegas's Craterside Supply. It's that game's Moira Brown. Let's talk about Mick a little bit. The first part of Mick and Ralph's. He sells weapons. Sometime before 2281, Mick partnered with Ralph. They became big-time arms merchants to the Omertas, the family that runs the Gomorrah on the Strip. They were running their guns to them, and eventually a fella named Troik expedited this process and cut ties with Mick and Ralph. Mick being the weapons merchant, the guy who really procures weapons in Mick and Ralph being the guy who has more consumables and whatnot, and more hard-to-get items. Mick, you can go up to him and go, and this is a quote from the game. I get all of my lore off of fallout.fandom.com, the Nukipedia, if you will. I love these games. I've played these games. I adore these games, but, I use the wiki for a little bit of research. You can ask him, do you have any special items for sale? And he'll say, why? Do you work for one of the casinos? And there's a 30 out of 30 speech check that if you have a 30 or higher, you'll pass it. If you have like a 29 or lower, you'll go, no. And he'll go, every weapon I sell is special. But if you have a 30 or higher, he goes, yes. A polite society is an armed society. And then you have access to a bunch of his special weapons. And some of the big things that you can get from him is from the Gunrunner's arsenal. You can get the Embrace of the Mantis King. It's a melee weapon. It's a unique version of a Mantis Gauntlet. There's a couple other fun things. Some of the ones I have written down here is the Nuka Breaker, a Nuka sign based on Zach Finfrock's Fallout Nuka Break. It was a prop in the show. It was used in episode 3 and episode 5. It's a direct take from something they used in the show. It's one of the few times where a fan creation has made it into the universe. it's an incredible thing that it exists. And if you've never used the weapon, it's awesome. It flickers and it lights up and it says Nuka on it. It's great. It's a well-loved item. And I don't just mean that from like the fan base. I don't just mean that in game, but it's a well-loved item in the sense of like the people who made the game loved something about Fallout so much that was a fan creation that they included it in the game. There's also Lil Devil, which is similar to the 14mm pistol from the older games. The 14mm pistol in Fallout 1 rips, and it's super dope. I'm totally going to pick that up my next big Fallout New Vegas playthrough, because I think I might do a stealth run. I think I might do a stealthy, small gun, speech, pick lock playthrough. I think that's what I'm going to do. And it's a holdout weapon, like I said, so you can put it away and whoosh, when you go in and out of casinos. So if I got to, pop a fella in the dome piece 2 times real quick for a biscuit. Now, Ralph, the other half of Mick and Ralph, sells the consumables. He sells things that are harder to procure. He's actually well-rounded when it comes to computers. It's reported that he has reprogrammed some Securitrons, and if you talk to Rotface, one of the ghouls around the east side of Freeside, he'll say, Ralph from Mick and Ralph's is no slouch with a keyboard. I've heard he's helped reprogram several robots in his time. So, it could be hearsay because it is from just a ghoul fella on the street who's addicted to chems, but also word spreads fast, and you can kind of pick out the BS from the not. I'd also trust Rotface. Now, when you need to get into the Strip, when you need to get into New Vegas proper, you can do a couple different things. You can either have 2,000 caps on you, which I don't think was specified enough in New Vegas, because I always thought of it as like you had to pay 2,000 caps, and then one time I got there with 2,000 caps and found out you just had to have it. And I was like, I'll just pay for it. One of the ways you can get in is have the 2,000 caps. You could go to the king will get you in, or you can go to Ralph and you can pay him with a speech check, a 50 speech check. You can pay him 500 caps and he'll get you a fake passport to enter. Or if you have a barter high enough, he'll lower to 375 caps and you can get your passport to get into New Vegas. He's involved in the quests King's Gambit and Wang Dang Atomic Tango. He actually has a line about pimping not being easy, which, some people know, some people don't. It's hard out here. And it's like only if you talk to him while doing a certain quest. But again, these are just small things about Mick and Ralph that I was always under the assumption they were much bigger than we had any idea. In my mind, Mick and Ralph are the 3rd largest trade commission in New Vegas. They're monstrous. I don't know how my brain just developed this far into thinking that they just were big and huge and massive, when in all reality, they're really not. They're really just a couple of fellas who are just trying to make a living. Some notes, some fun facts for you. Again, these are directly off of FalloutFandom.com. And this one didn't make sense to me, so I wanted to read it. If the Mick and Ralph crier near the central gate is shot by the player character or a companion, they will no longer be able to buy anything from either Mick or Ralph. They will say how they don't like the way they treat their friends and tell them to leave. Super dope. The crier's a child. You can't do that to children. So I want to know if I go in and I try it, if something happens and they just don't allow you to sell to them. The kid also says, wow, I can almost see all the way through the end of your barrel if you aim a gun at him. When you get access to Mick's special room and you get to buy all the extra weapons, it'll feature in his special inventory a tri-beam laser rifle, a railway rifle, 2 infiltrators, and a Chinese pistol, all models from Fallout 3, on the high right side of the wall. None of these weapons are actually sold by him, and they're display items and not actual weapons. They are inactive, non-interactable decoration. If the player uses any means of continuing the game after the ending slideshow, Ralph will comment on the outcome of the second battle of Hoover Dam. There was supposed to be a way to play the game afterwards, but for some reason it didn't happen. Maybe because the game was only made in 18 months. Who knows? That's just my running guess. my running theory, a fan theory, a game theory, if you will. But if you could, there are some files left in the game where Ralph will talk about it. Mick and Ralph, I have written down, Mick and Ralph sleep in the same bed, cause they're bros who kiss bros. They're gay fellas. Sometimes Mick's inventory just won't refresh, and there's a way to fix it by entering and exiting and talking to both of them, but sometimes it just doesn't work, and then you're just locked out of using them for the rest of the game. Ralph will greet Arcade Ganon if one enters the store with him as your companion, implying that either Arcane has been to the store or knows them, but if he was a follower from Freeside and the old Mormon fort, he more than likely knows pretty much everybody who lives in Freeside. Now, like I said, I thought Mick and Ralph were the biggest traders, merchants, in New Vegas. For some reason, I have no idea why. It was like the gun runners and then them. They are a mom and pop shop. They are hashtag shop local. They are a very big memory of mine when it comes to New Vegas. When I think of New Vegas, I think of Mick and Ralph. You know, I think of the Legion, I think of Yes Man, I think of Benny, I think of a myriad of things. I think of Doc Mitchell, I think of Good Springs, I think of the Cemetery, I think of Yes Man. You know, I think of Courier, and I think of Joshua Graham, you know, Yay by the River of Babel. Like, I think of all that. But Mick and Ralph stick out. And I don't know why. It might be the Pimp Boy 3 billion. There's a quest that you can do with them, the How Little We Know quest, where you have to figure out why Troik is selling to the Omertas. And if you do it in a certain way, and you get the Omertas to buy from Mick and Ralph again, buy their weapons from Mick and Ralph again, you get the Pimp Boy 3 billion, the gold diamond studded, it's got jewels, when you open it up for the first time, it makes a noise. You can get it swapped out if you think it's too gaudy and annoying. The Pimp Boy 3 billion, maybe that's what it is. Because I remember every run I did, I had to have it. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world, and I had to have it. And I hope you interact with them in a similar manner to the way I'm used to interacting with them next time you play, because that is this week's lore.